The recording has started.
Quinlan is the next man up.
I'm gonna be the Lego pizza here.
Many Bothans lost their lives, it's true, to bring the news across the galactic view. From the outer rim to the core sphere's light. Tune in this week and hold on tight.
You're listening to episode 8 of Across the Network with special guest host Mickey D from the Bothans Network and guest SunnyD from Team Sekrit. In this episode, we discuss how the meta is shaping up post-ban, 2 of the top decks, Quinlan Tarkintown and Han Green, and we each give our take on cards that we think will be breakouts over the coming weeks. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please consider doing so to let us know you love what we do, and enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of Across the Network. This is episode 8. Can't believe it. We're just gonna keep going. Today I have with me Mickey D and SunnyD, all the D's. There's no Lego Pizza. That's because Lego Pizza he decided he didn't want to live in Jersey anymore. He really wanted to live a lot closer to me. So it's going to be about 2.5 hours away from me now. I think that's why he's moving. I don't know. He'll have to ask him. But he's not here today for that reason. But we're really excited to have SunnyD from Sekrit and Mickey from Bothans Network, actually. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves real quick?
Yeah, I'm Mickey D. Mickey. I've been playing card games for like 20 years, it feels like at this point. I got into Swoop pretty early on. Randomly, my friend brought over a box and we did a 4-person draft with it. I had no expectations going in, and by turn 2 of the second game, I was addicted to the game. So, randomly just somehow stumbled upon Swoo, and here we are now. You might know me from some videos I've posted alongside. I won one of the first 1Ks in set 2. That was kind of where my first video spawned from with Palpatine Green. I have a couple PQ top 8s as well as the finals that came along with the Galactic Championship Day 1 bye. And yeah, you might hear me on commentary at some events sometimes. So that might be where you recognize my voice or have seen my face before.
Yeah, Mickey, in set 2, I had a showdown. Set 2 had just come out, and you won your tournament with Palpatine. I didn't know you yet at that time. And I saw your video, I saw your list, and I looked at it, and I tried to make some changes, and I didn't like any of my changes. And so I was like, look, I'm just going to run this list at the showdown. I had never run it. When I'm talking about making changes, that's me sitting down at the table, laying the deck out and asking myself what I want to change. Do I like the curve? All that kind of stuff. And so I took it, I sleeved it up at the venue, right before it's time to play. I had to borrow some cards from people, and it was 50 people, really great players. I took second place with your deck.
Hell yeah.
Wow. And it was so good. And then I was like, okay, who's this Mickey guy?
I know there was a lot of interweaving webs there too, because I know Ian, Lego Pizza Ian from Across the Network podcast. I believe it was at Gen Con, he took Han Yellow. That was kind of the emergence of Han Yellow. And I remember he had an interview with Ryan of Rebel Resource, and he talked about Palpatine Green, which he saw from that event. So it was kind of this interweaving of Bothans before. I think Ian wasn't even a Bothan at that point yet either. So it was really, really fun coincidence.
Similar with SunnyD. Sunny, you played Roulette Han Casino Han for a while, right?
Yeah, that was kind of the time period when it was set 3, so Twilight. That's when I got on the Casino Han type build of Green Han. But originally I was on more value Green Han.
Okay.
I wasn't playing out of aspects. And I actually started with that deck all the way back in set 1. Another content creator, Thork, was an inspiration there. When I picked up the deck in March of 2024, right? So.
Nice. I think didn't you play some Palpatine Yellow too?
Yes, yeah. So that was my primary deck through the set 1 showdown season. So even before PQ started, there was a lot of store showdowns. And this was even before Gen Con, before the SCG cons of Set 2. And I had won 3 store showdowns with Palp Yellow, and then topped, I think, a total of 10 store showdowns. Either 7 or 8 of them were with Palp Yellow, and the others were with Green Han. So, yeah.
I don't feel as bad with my... I only got 2, I think, showdown wins with Palp Green, but I only had 4 total, I think, or 5 total or something. So
that's a good rate, yeah.
It's not a bad
conversion rate.
Sunny, also, introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah. So I'm SunnyD or SunnyD, and I've been playing TCGs since I was a small kid with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, about a little over 20 years now. And I started picking up SWU around the launch of the game in March of last year. I went to a local convention in Washington, D.C. called AwesomeCon. And the reason I was there was actually because my friend was out of town, and he had a pass, and he told me that Rosario Dawson and Christian Haydenson would be at the con. So I was like, yeah, I'm interested in going and seeing them. So I went, and then I stumbled upon the board game room, and they were demoing Star Wars Unlimited. And then I demoed it, learned the game, kind of fell in love with it, and started playing it.
It's addicting.
Yeah. It's very much addicting. I also demoed slightly before it, Lorcana, but this one felt a lot better to me than Lorcana. Yeah, and I'm also part of a team called Sekrit, and Sekrit is a content team as well as a competitive team, and we're building a Discord community just like the Bothans network. We're trying to focus on a lot of competitive analysis, gameplay analysis, and theory. So do check us out.
Yeah, I'm going to put that stuff on the screen and in the descriptions. This goes out to Spotify, all the different RSS feeds, and YouTube. So I'll make sure it's all in there. Where can people go to find stuff that you guys are making? And like, what are you guys making? Do you have plans? Do you know something to talk about?
Yeah, so we have started a podcast that we're doing on Sundays as of now, where 2 to 3 of our team members will come on and talk similarly to across the network, and we'll have topics weekly. And then this is more of a live podcast, so we expect some users from the community or members from the community to join in every now and then. I used to run a podcast back in my days playing a former TCG, and we used to do the same thing where it was a different time period where users would call in, and then we would answer the phone call, and then they would talk about what their thoughts are. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then outside from that, we're gonna create some YouTube videos. We started with the team introduction and kind of our picks for 5 decks post the suspensions that recently happened with Django. But you can expect more content like that.
You guys are scary too. Like, didn't you almost make it at the 3v3? What was your path at the 3v3?
Yeah, 3v3, we were in the finals of the winners bracket, and then we ended up 3rd overall. So in the winners bracket, we knocked off KTOD before the finals, and then we played against the McClunky team number 1 in the finals. We had lost to them. Then we were waiting for the winner of the losers bracket to come back and play us, which ended up being a rematch with KTOD, and then they got us in the rematch.
Wow. We gave them their only loss, right?
Yeah. We gave KTOD their only loss, team loss, yep.
All right, so with Ian gone, I'll take a hot take. I'll do it this time. My hot take, in honor of Ian being gone, is I think Mono Han is a lot worse with DJ gone. Like, in ways that I don't know how obvious they are at first, but the two big things stand out to me. Number one is the deck plays liberated slaves, okay, for no reason other than it's a 3/5, and they just lost 50% of their 3/5s for 3 by losing DJ. So that, like, if we're playing a card like Liberated Slaves, then we care about our 3/5s on the ground for 3, right? Like, that's obviously a core part of what we're doing here, putting a blaster on it, etc. And sometimes DJ was the 3/5 for 3, and that was the right line to take, and he's gone now. And then the second one, and I'll let you guys come at me after this, I just have 2 main points, is tech is just not threatening anymore if you play it early. If you play it before you're on like 9 resources, I don't care. Go for it. Like if you're on 7, you're trying to actually play a 7. You're not trying to use tech. If you're on 6, you're trying to smuggle out a falcon, a big falcon, or you're trying to play something big, or you're trying to not be on 6 at all, right? Like, so
right.
Tech is just not scary. So before, when you had DJ did not have to be in your row for tech to be a threat. As soon as if you played an early tech, it got respect. They knew that they either needed a plan for when you DJ them, and they have 1 less resource now, or they just needed to kill that tech immediately. And now, people tech early against me, I don't care. I'm ignoring it. So what do you guys think?
All right, so then you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'll respond to your second one, which is the tech not being so threatening, and I totally agree with that. That was my first reaction. As a Han Green player, right? Tech was the way that I was going to DJ people, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like you could play it at 7, just like Han Yellow. But I would smuggle out tech at 4 resources, or just play tech with 3 resources, and it always had like pseudo sentinel, or people would bounce it with waylay or something like that, or cunning, right? And it no longer feels like that is the case, right? When you smuggle it out at 4 resources, played at 3, it's just largely ignored. But that being said, I think that a later tech in some decks is actually real strong right now. And one deck that I think it's potentially really good in is the Anakin Colossus deck. And the reason being is that deck has a heavy tactic package, in which all of those tactics are pretty situational for the most part. So you tend to resource them throughout the game script, but then you drop a tech late, and then your whole row is like these tactics that you ended up resourcing, right? Mm-hmm. So then you just have all the utility. And that's where I think that maybe tech shines in the post Django especially format, where that was one of the bad matchups for that deck, right?
I'll hop in a little bit here too, and about the tech specifically, because I agree. I think tech early is a lot worse now in Han Yellow, but I think tech late, even still on Han Yellow, is just as strong as it ever was, because late in the game, obviously, if you're DJ looping people, it's, GG at that point. But a lot of the power in tech 2 came from getting damage out of the row, whether it be through surprise strike or cunning if it got smuggled in, or like a Millennium Falcon you had to smuggle early. So still having access to that reach in your row through tech in the late game, I think, is really potent, because just as much as your opponent had to respect the DJ early from a tech, they kind of have to respect a surprise strike in the late game from a tech. So a lot weaker earlier, but still like a very strong card, and still gonna have a home in Han Yellow as it exists.
Yeah, and absolutely correct, because one of the first things that I looked for in the argument that you just made tech is a lot worse, right? Taking out DJ is replacing DJ with other cards that make tech useful, right? Mm-hmm. In the later game, right?
I do want to as well I'm going to be the Lego Pizza here, because I know he's always been a big fan of the Rebel package in Han. I think Han Yellow is weaker, obviously, like DJ was one of the best cards, one of the most degenerate cards in the game. And I think Han Yellow can still exist in this format, but you have to kind of change its identity a little bit. So you can't play the super grindy value game anymore, because DJ was how you beat the control decks. And now without that tool, they're going to outgrind you almost every single time. So you need to play more of like a tempo-oriented game, whether that involve pilots, like the Mandalorian is really strong, the new Han pilot's really strong, or whether it involve like the Rebel package with the C-3PO for your card draw early, and Fleet Lieutenants and Wing Leaders, those come back in, replacing that 3-drop slot so you're not so reliant on 3/5s. I think there is a way to build Han Yellow still. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the podcast. I don't think it's the best version of Han anymore, but I still think it's going to be a player and you're going to see it at tournaments. It's just going to have a slightly different identity than it used to.
Yeah, I agree there. It's interesting that Han Yellow never became sort of thought of as a meta deck until set 2 when DJ was released, right? And maybe we're going back to that. Maybe in set 1, Han Yellow was overshadowed by Boba Yellow, so that's why it never was seen as a that strong of a deck. But I do think that the power level is a lot reduced right now, but you can build it in many different ways that can compensate.
I think as well, in set 1, the only 7 you could really ramp to in mono yellow was Han, and DJ gave you a really good another 7-drop that you could just resource early if you needed it, or was very flexible. With the advent of set 3 also having Infest Nest, even though you're losing that DJ as a 7-drop, you still have another good 7-drop to pair with your Han unit. So like you're not solely reliant on drawing Han as your like power flip turn.
Yeah, set 1 we also didn't have Smuggle yet, and I don't know about you guys, but when Smuggle was first spoiled, I looked at Han and I was like, really? I get to just discard the stuff that's not Smuggle and keep all this This sounds amazing.
Yeah, Han loves the Smuggle mechanic.
So yeah, we are post-ban. It's been over a week, right? Like, we're recording this on a Thursday. Yes, today is Thursday. And it's been some time. How do you guys think the meta's shaping up? I mean, we got some tournament results we'll dive into, but before we throw that on the screen and talk about it, just what do you guys think's happening right now after these bans?
As a deck brewer, this is the most excited I've been since like set 2, I think. Maybe since like the beginning of set 3, once Boba was banned, there's kind of a similar verve and excitement for deck building. But the DJ ban in particular unlocked 6 deploy leaders in a lot of cases, because before, if you deployed on 6, oftentimes your resource was getting stolen, so you can never deploy. And then Django getting banned makes it so you can play units again, which is exciting. And so I have like 10 to 15 different SunnyD decks I've created in the past couple weeks, just like trying different things. And so it's the most excited I've been as a brewer. All that to say, I think the meta is super wide open now. There's a couple main targets that were top contenders before the ban that have stuck around, like Quinlan and Sabine, and Han Green as well didn't really get touched. So those decks still exist and are kind of the pillars right now, but like there's so much more space to interact and like try stuff out in between those pillars than there was before.
What are you thinking, Sunny?
Yeah, I kind of compare the situation right now to the second that you described, Mickey D, when Boba was banned, right? That was the time right before Twilight was released, and in getting into Twilight, we saw kind of the advent of some new strategies. So at that time, it was Django, funny enough, and then also Anakin Blue, right? But there were a lot of other strategies peppered in, and it got pretty diverse by the end of the PQ season of Twilight. To the point where you had at least 4 to 5 different leaders in almost every top cut of a PQ, right? And I think that is going to be the case in this coming PQ season and the last sector, the regionals, right? So just in the past weekend, we had a big France showdown, 84-person store showdown. That's the biggest I've ever heard of for a store showdown. And that had 7 different leaders in the top 8, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it will be 7 different leaders in the top 8 every single event, but it will be probably that 4 to 5 leaders on average, just like we had in Twilight. And in Twilight, we had Han that was dominating, right, as the winning deck for a lot of events. But for the most part, the tournament top cuts were pretty diverse.
To sneak in an extra little hot take, I think at least one of the Richmond and Minneapolis will have a top 8 of entirely unique leader-based combos. Like 8 completely different, maybe not completely different decks, but like, you know, Sabine
Combos,
ECL and
yeah.
Poe ECL are different, even though they have similar strategies. But like, and maybe a leader doubles up and there's like a Palp Blue and a Palp Yellow, like there was at the showdown. But like, I think one of those two is going to have 8 unique leader-based combos in the top 8.
I think that's exciting for viewers too. Like, we can't all go to Richmond and Minneapolis. We can't all go to these sectors, but we can still enjoy coverage. We can enjoy watching some great matches, and getting a diversity of matches is really exciting for the viewer. You don't want to watch Django mirrors round after round. That is just boring.
Yeah.
Coming into this set, Jump to Lightspeed, it was so exciting. Cards are all really good. With the way that rotations are being set up by FFG, it seems like, and we mentioned this on another episode, that maybe sets that come in that establish like the beginning of a new rotation, maybe they'll be more foundational, because we're seeing this, that people are comparing Jump to Lightspeed to set 1. Well, it's the beginning of a rotation cycle. Well, so was set 1. And it had a lot of great cards. This one has a lot of great cards, a lot more leaders that were excited to play and try out. Whereas in some of the set 2 and 3, there were a ton of leaders that were like, okay, I'm not touching that. And only a handful of things that got really exciting.
I think set 3 had like 3 or 4 leaders that see play, but also only 3 or 4 cards that see play, really.
Yeah.
So.
And then, I'm going to cut out my rambling here, but it was... I lost my thought. Oh, okay. And so then, coming into Jump to Lightspeed, the cards are exciting. It looks like an excellent base of, to build decks off of. And then there's Django. And as exciting as the cards were, then we saw, the tank. We saw IG-2000. We saw the Devastator. All in combination with TDR and Django. And what that was like. Started testing it, started playing those matches, and realized, wow, this is pretty miserable. I was excited about this set, not so much anymore. So when they did that ban, it opens the floodgates, like you guys are saying.
I never recorded a video, but I had thought about it for a long time. A little mini rant I had of when they said, not to poke the FFG bear, but when they said on stream, just kill Django, it really upset me, because they had released an article, I think like the same day or at least the same week, about wanting to promote unit combat and have more games to be played on the board. And then Django's a leader that completely disincentivizes unit combat. And like, do you want to play, you don't want to play units against Django because that they're just going to tap it down. And like, it just all felt super tone deaf to me. And so I'm glad they like, credit where credit is due. They realized and they changed their ways, and they eventually banned Django. So good on them for that. But it was very frustrating when in the thick of it.
Yeah, and then something that was actually kind of surprising to me. I mentioned this on our own team podcast and video, is that I was surprised that they took the route of hitting both leaders and cards in the same suspension. Right, so they hit. My thoughts were they would either ban DJ and TDR or do the opposite and ban Han and Django, but they did a mix, right? So that shows that they're willing to recognize like just what's the best answer to solve the or at least what they think is the best to solve the metagame, not just something that's based on one way or one method or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also coming to the TDR card ban, there was a video that I made back in set 2 time for what's the cards that I was most excited for set 2. I mentioned Tech and TDR, so even at that time, I remember it was like I looked at it as something really, really broken. It didn't really get to that stage until this, right, where it was so problematic with IG-2000 and or Juggernaut, Devastator. But that card it's like virtually pulling you a card from the deck and giving you a large hit to base or a trade, and another card in hand, right?
Yeah.
To combo with something else like sneak attack, and that ended up being a problem.
It was way too
Now,
much.
it was way too much, but one of the unintended, or maybe it was intended, consequences of the TDR hit was it does weaken a lot of strategies outside of Django that wanted to use the card, right? So I had a pet deck that was Vader Yellow, the new pilot Vader, and then I would play TDR and pull a lot of the vehicles that are not running Django Tarkintown, or we're not running that deck, but I can't do that anymore, right? And then similar effect happened to the new Boba, I would say.
It's very much like banning symptoms versus banning causes, because like you could argue ban War Juggernaut and Devastator, but those are cards you were banning because of Triple Dark Raid. And there is a sacrifice there, and I had a bunch of local friends who really like the card, and it is really fun, but it gets a lot less fun when in tournament it's getting a Devastator or a War Juggernaut or a Ruthless Raider 90% of the time.
Yeah, I think tutors like this, and it's like a pseudo tutor, right? You're only looking at so many cards, but I think they're gonna be a little dangerous in this game. In a lot of games, you're trying to assemble combos, you're trying to assemble synergies. In this game, your leader is already on the table. Every game, it's always there. So if you have a very strong interaction that you can search for, find, pull out of your deck, and you have redundancy in that interaction, and it's a synergy with your leader, this is all Django, you're in a dangerous space. So it's going to be something I think that they'll just kind of have to keep an eye on. Like the 4-cost tutor that lets you find any card, we don't really play that. It's been played, but we don't really play that. A tutor like TDR that puts the card immediately into play, immediately leverages a synergy of a card that starts the game on the table is very dangerous.
Yeah. It does so much. Agreed.
So yeah, what do you guys think about the 84-person tournament, these results that we're looking at? I've got it on screen for any viewers and for listeners. It was Sabine ECL first, Bosk Blue second, and then Red Han, the green base, Palp Yellow, Palp Colossus, Quinlan Tarkintown, Mono Han, and then Piet Colossus. What do you guys think about that top 8?
I think it's pretty representative of like the meta we're gonna see, and it feels pretty wide open. Like we have some Hans, we have some more fringe decks like the Han 2 ECL list, and you can argue if Piet is kind of fringe, as well as seeing a surge in like later deploy leaders, as well as control. Without DJ, control gets a little bit more breathing room. I will say the like Bosk Blue style of control also lost its most like common prey in Django, but with its most common predator gone as well, it gets to like rebuild the deck and get to try out in this new interesting world. Sabine and Quinlan and Han are there, which is kind of what we expect the stalwarts of the next format to be. So I think it was pretty well representative of what I expect the meta to be going forward. Maybe expect a Cad in there as well. I think Cad is going to be like the yellow villain cards are still very good, so they're going to find a home. But seems pretty, and it seems also very healthy for the meta to look like this.
Yeah, I think I agree. Not necessarily all those decks I expect to see in the various different top cuts we'll have going forward, but some mix of the same, as well as others like Anakin, right? I don't think there was an Anakin in top cut in that event. And then there might be some pilot leaders that we see mixed in some events here and there. That Django kind of prevented going tall strategies, right, with pilot leaders, as well as just yellow being so prevalent prevented them with bounce and other exhaust kind of cards. So I do believe that this top cut was pretty indicative going forward of the meta and how it will shake up.
It's like half control decks. And then some mid-range, 2 mid-range, 2 aggro.
Yeah.
Ish, like mono, like Han being kind of tempo-y mid-range, Quinlan being tempo-y mid-range, and then the first and third both aggro ECL decks.
Yep.
Yeah, and also I wanted to chime in on, so Mickey, you mentioned that Piet kind of like a fringe deck. That's interesting. I see it a little bit the same way, but it's interesting that it panned out that way because going into JTL, it was one of the leaders that most people were looking at and saying that it's extremely strong.
Yeah.
But the thing with Piet is their game plan is really linear, right? So it almost feels as if they might as well play open-handed in a lot of deck builds of it, right? So that being said, though, it is very good at what it does. So I expect to see it peppered in top cuts.
Whether it's the best deck in the room or even like the best deck in its archetype, it's gonna be seen. I don't expect it to go anywhere.
He's gonna make you like reevaluate him every set. You're gonna look at all the capital ships. Okay, how good is Piet now?
Yeah, and there's one particular combination of cards that I was looking at as a problem at the start of JTL, and that was Devastator into Planetary Bombardment, right? And Piet is probably still the deck that can do that the best.
That is like, this Piet was blue. I am curious about exploring a red build because we saw in Django early Devastators be fittingly devastating. And so Piet is the next best leader now that TDR is gone in order to be able to slam those early Devastators. And so there might be something there.
So there is, from my perspective, there's a reason I invited both of you guys to join us this week. Mickey, you have been playing a lot of Quinlan Tarkintown.
Yeah.
I mean, since Quinlan came out, have you?
Yeah, so when Quinlan was previewed, his last name is Voss, and my last name also happens to be Voss. So from that alone, I was gonna build this deck. I also a lot of my favorite cards just so happen to be cunning heroism cards, like Kira and Ahsoka and Plo Koon are some of my favorite cards in the game, and they all work fantastically with Quinlan. So I've been playing this deck since he was previewed, I think before the full launch of set 3.
I think this deck is the boogeyman now. What do you guys think about Quinlan Tarkintown?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Quinlan is the next man up for sure entering this kind of expected diverse field, but it was the second most played deck in the majority of tournaments, even in the Django field, right? So that being the case, it is the one that a lot of people will flock to at the very start.
Yeah. I think if Quinlan is your boogeyman, it's a sign of a healthy format because for the most part, Quinlan plays a pretty fair game. Like the discard can feel a little unfair at times, especially Force Throw can feel unfair, and Target is super powerful. But it has always been a deck that you can target pretty well. Like you can swarm with 1-drops. You can like put some sticky upgrades on things. Like a Darksaber on a Sabine can be really tricky to deal with. Even a Saber on an R2, if they don't have the Waylay, can be tough to deal with. And like a Falcon with a Chewie on it nowadays can be tricky for the Quinlan decks to deal with. So you have these avenues that are pretty well lined up in order to beat this deck if you really want to. It makes you weaker against other decks in the field, but it's all like, you know, these are the sacrifices you have to make in deck building, and it's, again, sign of a healthy format these are choices that you're making. So I do expect it to be the boogeyman. I don't know if it'll be the boogeyman for the entirety of set 4. I wouldn't be surprised like if the Quinlan counters come out at first and then people start to adapt to those decks, and then Quinlan kind of settles in. It's still probably a top 3 deck in the format throughout entirety of set 4, but maybe not always the best deck on a given weekend is where I expect it to land.
I'm thinking like I'm what if something new doesn't emerge, I have trouble seeing anyone else be like the deck to beat.
I think Sabine is in a similar spot where I think the Sabine-Quinlan matchup is pretty close. It's pretty 50-50. Okay. And Sabine is another deck that, if it's the best deck in your format, it's pretty healthy because it's another deck that's pretty targetable. We've seen it before with the Han Cunning lists being, like, you can out-tempo them and outrace them sometimes with disruptive effects. I can see like a Han list kind of taking that same spot because that's another matchup that's very close in my opinion. And Han is again another deck that is counterable to some degree. And then some sort of blue-green villain list, whether it be Akira or even a Palpatine if you want to go bigger. So those are the decks I think are going to cycle. Like, I don't think right now any one deck is better than another. It's just some are going to be better calls for certain weekends depending on the field you expect.
Right.
Yeah, I agree there. And I think I also agree with you, Jonathan. There might not be a deck in set 4 at least that can oust Quinlan as kind of like the top meta share, even if it's very diverse. I think what has to happen for that to be the case is there has to be a deck that is very high power level, but also well insulated against the discard capabilities that Quinlan has. Right. Han had that with Smuggle, but it has weaknesses of its own, right? So it may not be the power level of Django in the previous pre-suspension, right, level. So
yeah, even despite the Smuggle, if you get hit with some discard early on, you got to be careful about how often you're putting down with the Han ability. Or you're going to be in like a really tight spot where you have to put down your whole hand to get to 7.
Get to the ploy.
Yeah, just to get to your flip.
Yeah, I actually have a question for you, Mickey, about Quinlan, right? So post Django ban, right, and post DJ ban, TDR, how much do you think the deck changes? Right, going into the next,
I think a decent
foreseeable future.
I think a decent amount. So I think Tarkintown is still going to be prevalent, but I'm not like as scared of playing a 3/4 because P38 into Tarkintown was so brutal. And against the other Tarkintown decks, either it's CAD where you can assign your pings where you want, or it's Quinlan where you can kind of take this action tug of war. So for example, I think Ezra becomes a more reasonable include again. I was so scared of playing that card because of being Tarkintown. I think Red 5 can come back into the list because of it's pretty good against Han, especially all the pilots. It's really good against, and I'm less scared of it. And then at the extremes last set, we were taking out like Spark of Rebellion and some of those like slower, more targeted discard effects. I think those have to come back in now, personally, because it's another good answer for the pilots against Han, which is one of your weaknesses, as well as the control decks that are probably going to rise up. So it doesn't change a ton, but like I think specifically the 3-drop lineup gets a lot more interesting. You don't have to play Poe anymore if you don't want. I still like that card a lot, but a lot of its power for me was against Django and being able to both clear the Django and race them if you need to. And so that gives you room for more top end and like the Han Solo unit again. But the core of the deck, I would say the core 40 cards is still pretty similar. The biggest, most drastic change is probably I'm on 2 Bamboozle main decks in my list right now.
Yeah, that's a big change. Just in the 3-drops and then Bamboozle seems like a totally different meta call. I also would point out probably that with such a high meta share that Django took up, and that being Tarkintown deck, without that, there's probably going to be just more HP to deal with in the meta, right? So I can see now people running the Data Vault, Colossus builds a little bit more. 25 isn't like the threshold that you need to hit. So like you said, Poe, it was really good to hit that threshold. Is it still good enough to hit the higher threshold? Maybe, right? But it might not be as much of a auto include or medical include for that reason.
I think you have to lean more into the grindy side of Quinlan a bit. Like I've had tech in the main deck before because you have so much inherent smuggle already with Cassians and blasters, and it's a 5 health 3-drop. That's totally okay. So leaning more into being comfortable taking the game later. I think you have to get used to with Quinlan now.
So in Denver, there were 117 Tarkintown bases across 420 players. So like More than 25% of the field was playing Tarkintown. And then ECL was only 38.
Yeah.
Colossus was 46. So, and what is it? Sorry, the 33 base, health base.
Data Vault.
Someone tell me the name. Data Vault. Data Vault had a good match win percentage. And this data that I have doesn't include mirror matches. It's just the match win percentage of people that were playing that base. Did better than a lot of the other bases. So I would not be surprised to find that people are learning the drawbacks of these higher health bases can be overcome in deck building. You can figure out how to solve it, and then you can really lean into having all that extra health, especially against 25 health bases, which Quinlan Tarkintown is one of those bases. So if I got 10 more health than you, how can I leverage that? How can I use that?
I think Colossus is the most interesting one to explore because it is very much a sacrifice losing that opening card in your hand against an expected meta of Quinlan because they're so prevalent with the discard. So you have to keep in mind when deck building, sometimes you might only have 2 cards in your opening hand. And what are your game plans around that?
Yeah, that's the biggest limiting factor of Colossus is Quinlan existing right now. But to your point, Jonathan, right, in Denver, such a high meta share of Tarkintown, in that 84-player France tournament that just occurred, I think I was looking at it just now, and it's 15 Tarkintowns, and then I think maybe close to the same amount of Colossus and ECL. And
that's a lot
the
less.
rest were the 30 HP.
Yeah,
that's a lot less Tarkintown.
That's a lot more balanced. That feels healthy.
Yep. 13 ECL, 13 Colossus, 15 Tarkintown.
Nice.
That's what I see.
That's a good balance. It is very interesting thinking about Colossus in this new meta and just in general, because my initial reaction to seeing the card was I think a lot of people are going to play that base when they shouldn't, because losing that card just makes your resourcing throughout the entire game so awkward. But I've learned in this game, and I'm still learning, base health is like more important than, for example, I think your life total is in Magic, stuff like that. Mostly because I think there's less ways you can't block in this game. So if your opponent wants to go base with their units, they can go base unless you throw down a Sentinel. Being 5 damage away from lethal makes you play the game so differently, and that's where like these extra HP bases in general really shine. It's not when you're at 30 with a 35 health, it's when you're at like 23 and you still have 12 damage to go as opposed to 7. That's where Colossus really shines, I think.
Yep. So Stevie in the episode with Stevie, he talked about how he could use the health of his base, because he was on the 33 base, to buy him some time to set up. Like, it was okay for him to just take those hits in the first few turns. He knew that his opponent wasn't going to be able to close him out entirely, and then he could start dropping these shielded sentinels into the lane that needed to be focused on and really take over the game. George told me his favorite podcast is called Force Unlimited, which made me really sad, but I respect it. And after he told me that, I was like, oh, okay, I gotta go listen to one of these episodes. And I listened to their Mole Drifters and Baneslayers episode, and they talked a lot about, there was a segment about Restore, and why is Restore good in this game when Lifelink isn't great in Magic? Like, what's going on here? And a lot of what they talked about is being able to hit the base and not like being able to choose who you attack. And you just can't, it's like inevitable. Unless you keep their board completely clear, they're going to be hitting you with something most turns. And there's not a lot of healing in the game. So you're getting to this inevitable conclusion of the match, and being able to attack, use an attack action and restore health on your base is a big deal. Or just starting with 10 more health than your opponent is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I have one more point, but pause for a second there.
I think the way George put it was you free cast a top target at the beginning of the game.
Right. A refillable top target.
Yes.
Yeah, if you have the restore, it's refillable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So our last episode, or with Mike and Stevie, another thing that I tried to articulate, but I think I failed a little bit, was that there's also a critical moment in almost every game where you hit the point where you are forced to claim because your opponent has a lethal attack on the board. And when you have extra base health, you're pushing that moment in time to a later point in the game. So you can win a game and not have 29 health on your on your 33 HP base. You can win that game, and it might not be, it might not look like the 33 mattered, but it absolutely did, because that moment where you were forced to claim didn't come as soon. Like that kind of pattern can happen a lot in these games when your bases are higher in HP. You don't have to throw away as many attacks because you're not in check as quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I actually didn't think of it that way, but that probably means that you can do more things during your turn, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Use action economy to generate maybe some other, develop the board, develop the hand, right? Just a little bit differently.
Yeah, so that point where you have each other in check, when they're lower health, you can get them in check faster than they can you. And now you're putting that pressure on them to be forced to claim.
It's really like thinking deeply about it now, coming to a realization here that I hadn't like fully verbalized before, is you're sacrificing a card not just for health, but also for action economy. It's just you don't get that action, you don't get to cash in that action economy until later in the game. So a card is a card worth 5 health. I don't know. Is a card worth 5 health and 3 actions? Probably. And on the flip side, it's more than just a card, because it's gonna make your resourcing decision throughout the entire game awkward. So maybe you have to sacrifice resources here or like certain lines, but it's super nuanced. It's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I've been a control player most of my life in all the games I play. It's just what I enjoy. I like it. And in this game, a pattern comes up where the control player is looking at the board state and they say, well, I have to claim and I must top deck this card. And it's usually Super Laser Blast or something like that, right? Like, I have to claim and I need to play Super Laser Blast or I'm dead. And that point in time, it matters when that happens. So if that can happen an entire turn later in the game, you give yourself a whole nother turn cycle to reach your inflection point where you've pivoted and you flip the game in your favor, and now you're pushing to win.
Yeah.
So that's Quinlan Tarkintown. We dove into some other stuff. Sunny, I thought of you as a Han specialist, and not just a Han specialist, a Han Green specialist. And with DJ being out of the meta, I thought, I want to hear what Sunny has to say about Han Green. You played Han Green in Seattle, and you've been playing it for a long time.
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, since the beginning of the game, it was the second deck that I ever played. The first deck that I played was Thrawn 1,
nice.
Blue, right? And I didn't do very well with that at the first local tournaments I went to. But then I started playing Han Green, took it to a 1K, started taking it to store showdowns, and I had been playing it since then. Played many different decks in between, like the Palpatine we described, and then I played even Boba Green during its height in a lot of PQs, which I topped. But Han Green has always been my favorite deck combination throughout the game, right? And I think that the DJ ban makes it officially better than Han Yellow.
Yeah. How do you think it's positioned right now?
I think it's positioned really well. So a lot of what was preventing the pilot strategy from going off in JTL is Django just exhausting the piloted unit, right? And that is something that Han Green, one way you can build it, it wants to do that, right? You can play a really high number of pilots and go pilot aggro, or you can play like a medium number of pilots, like the Chewbacca one, and just Han Solo pilot or a Luke pilot, right? But regardless, that strategy is going to be stronger no matter how much you're invested in it without Django in the format. Before, I would say the best pilot was actually the Han Solo pilot because of the action compression and getting around Django if you have initiative, right? And now that's not the case. It's actually Chewbacca, right? And Chewbacca is such a problem to deal with for many different decks. It not only buffs the unit kind of in a similar style to Darksaber or General's Blade with Sabine, but it just you can't bounce that unit. You cannot kill that unit with defeat abilities, right? So you have to figure out a way to get rid of the upgrade with upgrade removal, or use a combination of exhaust, combination of trading your own units into it, right? It is something that has to be answered. So just by that virtue, the piloting angle of Han Green has become so strong. But now even you can consider some of the strategies that I had been using in previous formats to be pretty strong. That casino out of aspect, Django was limiting that too, because it would stop you on the 6 resources for 2 turns in a row in kind of like the normal game script, right? And then now Quinlan will still probably keep that in check because they have cards like Plo Koon and discard, right? So if you put down a card, then they may discard your 7 in the hand, it might be your last card, or they just crash Plo Koon and kill your Han leader. But now you have to just deal with one of those decks. And versus the other decks, you might be able to ramp ahead, play a 7 fairly easily, and bring out maybe an out of aspect Cad Bane, right? Or Luke. So that both strategies got enhanced without Django in the format.
I think the suite of pilots in the pilot version is really interesting because I think each of them shines in different matchups. Like Chewie, obviously super good against control. Han, really good in the race and matchups. And then the Luke pilot, I think, I was thinking about this morning, knowing that we were going to record this tonight. I think the Luke pilot is the one that's best against Quinlan because, like, besides Waylay, their answers are going to be damage space through Tarkintown. And so Han is also good against them because you get the action compression, but it often takes them 2 actions to answer your piloted unit anyway. So you're going to get that attack off. Plus, once they finally answer this giant monster they have to answer, you're still left with the 3-2 that, like, they most likely have to clear to stay balanced in the race. So each of those pilots being like just good standalone cards too, like a 3-2 for 2 is totally fine. A 5-6 with Chewie's text is totally fine. A 4-5 ambusher for 5 is totally fine. But also each of those pilots being really versatile in different matchups is really enticing for me. Like looking at this on green list.
Yeah, and definitely there's also 2 pilots that I ran, and even in the Django meta, that I think still have tremendous value in going into this new meta, and that's other than the ones you mentioned, right? Those are the great ones. But the Mando pilot, even being out of aspect as a unit, it's in aspect as a pilot, right? And in mirrors, maybe sometimes that's how you win versus other space mirror decks, right? As you exhaust that unit and also buff your unit with the Mando pilot. I was certainly doing it against Django when they brought out TDR unit. They would exhaust my unit in space most often, and then I would just equip that, buff my own unit, exhaust their TDR unit, and then it would bounce to hand, and I have a buffed unit. Right, so it's kind of a similar mentality in space aggro mirrors with that unit, and I can see it being really strong. Now the other one that you see in the Han Green is the Poe pilot, right? And Poe pilot was one that I just kept going back and forth on: is it worth it or not? Because the 2-3 stat line or boost, when you don't have action compression like Han, it doesn't seem necessarily as strong as a more aggressively statted pilot upgrade. However, the bimodal aspect of it is really strong, right? So you're able to just choose when playing it as a unit to crate a 3/3 in ground, which is Poe itself, and then an X-Wing, and then you can decide, do you want a 4/5 or do you want that split, right? Or do you want a 2 and a 2/2 in space, which is the X-Wing, and then you buff something you had pre-existing.
Yeah.
Right. And that I feel is the pilot that gets the best post Django suspension with the onset of control decks back into the meta, like villain control decks. Because this is like what insulates you versus power and some of the other defeat effects, other than just Chewie, is you have multiple units, or you're able to create multiple units, right? Or buff different units.
Mm-hmm. So. It's a different Han, but something that was really enticing was in Han 2 ECL going black 1 into cheat in the Poe, equip the black 1 with Poe and get a 2/2, and that damage is erased because now it's a pilot.
It's so good. I was going to mention that. Yeah, if any point in the meta before the rotation, Tarkintown would be banned.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
That deck just goes through the roof because of stuff like this, like the Poe interaction. Yeah, and the what's that? There's a ground unit that it deals damage to itself. You know what I'm talking about?
The dilapidated ski speeder.
Yeah. And then you can attach bigs on it, and it'll become like an extremely crazy grit unit. Yeah. So those two interactions, the Poe interaction and that interaction, could take off.
Yeah.
Stan was wrecking me with that Poe in Han 2 decks. That was tough. Another thing that I am seeing in this Han deck, some of these, when we try to build pilot decks in Jump to Lightspeed, because we just got pilots, a lot of times you're wanting to play an early ship, right? And so it's those 2-drop ships, and they're like these little ships. We don't have to play 2-drop ships in Han.
Yes.
In this deck, it's all 3-drop ships. So you're even playing like this chunkier spaceship that's harder to deal with as quickly. You know, if they're leading in space, they're probably not able to handle your ship unless they're also Han, or they've got a pilot or something. But you're deploying 3-drop ships, big ships to put your pilots on. Yeah, so that aspect itself just puts you ahead of the other pilot decks to start, right? Because you just start with a bigger ship than they do most of the time. Now, I do think that actually backfires sometimes in a matchup that we discussed earlier, right? The Quinlan matchup, where you're putting down a card to play that big ship, and then you have less hand control over your own hand later, right? It's just dictated by their discard hate, right? So sometimes in that matchup, do you consider playing some 2-drop space units for that reason, right?
Even the action economy of having to put the card down first means that if they have Spark or Rebellion turn 1, which I think is really good into the Han matchup, they can just snipe your ship before you even get to play it. I am curious. Sunny, I am curious your thoughts on the stolen AT Hauler, because I think the 6 Falcons are pretty obvious. The Hauler is a more contentious card. I know some people really like it. The stats are insane, but it also has such a huge downside alongside the huge ceiling. So I'm curious where you're at on that card.
Yeah, I think the stats outweigh the downside right now. And post board, there's ways to get it back, right? Salvage is the key one. But the stats versus 2 of the most popular decks that I anticipate at the start make the difference, right? And that's Quinlan and Sabine, right? Sabine, one of their key plays, not everyone runs it, but I think a lot of people do run it. Sabine Masterpiece, with a playing like a turn 1 Battle for Marine, and then turn 2 ECLing Sabine's Masterpiece, it becomes a 4/4, right? It can't take out Hauler. It can't take out the turn 1 Hauler. That's super critical. But it can take out every other turn 1 space unit that you would want to play, right? And then Quinlan, the 5 health is putting you outside of the Tarkintown ping, and then Tarkintown, right? So it's huge.
Like there's an like some math you can do with Quinlan to defeat a hauler with a Chewy on it, but it requires a lot more pieces. It requires like Falcon or Red 5 and a pump and a Tarkintown, and like while they're doing that, you can set up the Kira's on the ground to disrupt them and like keep bashing them.
Yep.
Or even a Chewy on the ground at that point gets really scary. So it's losing the 4-5. I don't think is that big of a deal. And even like sometimes against Control, I've noticed that they don't even want to play the hauler back. I consider it like putting it back in the ecosystem is what I think of. And like you put it back in the ecosystem, well, now your Han opponent has a chance to get rid of it and get it back on their side of the field. And what are you going to do about that? So it's not free for your opponent to play it, especially with the bounce.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Normally, it's considered a liability versus those blue decks, right? But I have seen people opt to not play it because you have them on the damage clock, and then any little thing that could swing it back, right? The hauler, I mean, might put them just like an action away from death, right? So they choose just not to take it, just choose to out it.
Yep. And like if you're ahead enough in the damage race, you can put your opponent under enough action pressure too, where they don't have the action economy to be able to play it after killing it. They have to claim or something.
Yeah.
So
I think that card's really good. I know that it's got like mixed feelings among a lot of people, but if there was a deck to fit it in, it's a deck where you can cheat it out early like this, and then you can pilot it, put its stats even more out of range.
I agree with you. I'm pretty high on the card right now.
So yeah, I think those two decks are going to be pillars of the meta coming up, and I mean right now, not coming up. Sabine, which we don't have a specialist necessarily on this episode about Sabine. We'll talk about it in the future. But then villain control is I expect to be stepping in a little bit into this gap with DJ gone. I can tell you, when I've played against Han, my mind is clear. My soul is at rest. I'm at peace.
Yep.
My brow is not nearly as furrowed. I feel so much better. Knowing that I do not have to deal with DJ is such a relief to like all the things I have to plan when I'm playing Palpatine or other later control decks. And I'll put my version of Palpatine on screen. It's going to be different from what you see a lot of people play, I think. But, these control-y ramp decks, even against Quinlan, I'm finding that if I hit one of my ramp pieces, I'm lining up pretty well.
It's
into what we're doing.
It's why the discard is so important. Like just stopping the ramp before it happens is critical against these ramp decks. I think Kira ECL or Kira Green in general might be one of Quinlan's worst matchups existing in the field.
Yes.
I will say I don't think Quinlan has worse than like a 40-60 matchup. That's just kind of the deck it is. It also doesn't have any better than like a 60-40 matchup. It exists in that very 50-50 state. But Kira Green is a good way to target it. If you can ramp into flip, especially against all of their 3/5s, it's super potent because like you flip and then you attack in, and if your Quinlan opponent doesn't have a way to clear the Kira at that point, you have a 7 power unit ready to either smack 7 to their 25 health base or just like hold their Quinlan hostage, or maybe a bit of both. As for Palpatine, Colossus I think is like the biggest boon Palpatine has gotten in a long time, because you've always wanted the extra health. Being down the card doesn't hurt as much because you can recoup that card advantage pretty easily with the Palpatine ability. I took this deck to locals this past week, and I find myself, like, I was always pretty aggressive with my Palpatine sacks, but with Colossus, it gives you that room, and also, like, you kind of need that card advantage to where I'm sacking my units even more aggressively now. Like, I've sacked full health Royal Guards that had Sentinel just to get that extra card and get that velocity going, so it's very,
yeah.
I was playing a best of 3 on Petronaki. By the way, Petronaki has best of 3s now. I don't know how long they've had it, but when I realized it, I was excited. I like that.
Yeah.
One of the good feature ads.
Love it. And I sacked a Vader and kept this was an in-person match. I sacked a Vader and kept my Pershing. And it was a relatively healthy Vader. It had 3 damage on it. And my opponent was like, I want to know after the match why you did that. Can you please explain that after we're done? And Vader's unique. It did its job. It, killed something. I'm ready to sack it, draw a card. I want to keep the Pershing to keep my hand full. And if I hit another Vader, I want to be able to play it. Like, I am also using that ability very aggressively right now.
Yeah, and then 2 leaders I want to mention in the villain portion, right, is Bosk, right? That's one of the ones that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Boss Blue. I think Mickey, it was you that mentioned that, it was one of you that mentioned that its biggest prey is gone.
Yeah.
Right, with Django, but also the biggest card that deck hates is gone to DJ, right? So it's a double double-edged sword, but that deck is strong. And the other is just Cad Bane, right? That's another leader that it saw some pretty good performances in Beatle, especially.
Yeah.
In both versions, I would consider there being 3 versions of it in Beatle. There was a Cad Blue 30 HP, and then Cad Blue Colossus, and then also Cad Green, right? 30 HP. And I've even been seeing some Cad Green data vaults.
Yeah, I've seen some
floating around, right?
Too, yeah.
And we do see this isn't necessarily more of a control deck. Even the green one's not necessarily a control deck, but it's somewhat leaning that way. But the Tarkintown version of Cad also very strong.
I think Cad in general is a leader that's going to be well positioned because like there's a vacuum that Django left in the yellow villainy space, and I think Cad is like the clear follow up.
Anytime you talk about a leader and then you can say every single color after that leader's name, like that's a pretty good leader. It does good things.
Yeah, and 2 points I want to bring up about that is we talked about these 2 decks prior, both Quinlan and Han, and Han has a lot of 4 HP units, right? That you want to get rid of before they start piloting. McClunky plus a ping usually is what's enough to get rid of that. And then I remember, Mickey, you mentioned the 3 drops. You were able to play like stuff like Ezra again, but maybe one of the downsides of playing Ezra again is the 4 HP versus 5 HP, right? Yeah, units. So if you start leading that way, then you're making trade-offs into Cad.
It's part of why I think Cad Tarkintown and Cad in general might be on the rise. Is people are kind of reacting to this, not necessarily a lack of Tarkintown, but certainly a decrease of it. Like its biggest proponent is gone. It's still part of probably the best or one of the best decks in the meta, but it's a lot less prevalent and it's easier to play around because like you can play around the Quinlan ability by making them use it or just like playing off curve, as opposed to Django gets to play their P38, ping your thing, Tarkintown it. In reaction to that, like people building their decks less around Tarkintown, then Cad can start to come in, both as a Tarkintown version, but also he preys on 4 health units, whether it be with that McClunky or even just like a 4 loam and a Bosk unit. Like those ambushers also feast upon 4 health units. So I think Cad is primed to start to climb into some of these top 8s.
Yeah, you know what? I think people are slow to move to new leaders and new decks. So like you were talking about how good some of these leaders are, how well positioned they are right now. But for a lot of people, if you've never played that leader or you haven't put the time in, it can be hard to pick up a Cad deck. Those lines can get a little complicated. Do you know exactly how Bosk McClunky works? You need to.
Yeah.
Do you know exactly when you should ping first or ping second? How you should order your ambushing? It takes a little practice, and I think I don't think you're wrong that these deck like Cad is well positioned. But we don't see it in the results yet. We didn't see it in Denver. We haven't seen it much. And I think part of that does come down to how technical some of those decks can be, including Monohan, even when it had DJ. As good as the deck was, we didn't see that many people playing it. even though
Yes.
it has a representation shift well into the positive from in terms of its conversion rates.
Yeah.
You still didn't see a lot of people play it.
Yep. I think that that's a really good point about like specific leader-based combination play patterns. The biggest example for me personally is whenever I'm not playing Quinlan, I hate that my Plo Koons only hit for 6 instead of 7. Like I get so used to that kind of play pattern, and so like that's like a very obvious one, but there's a lot of little intricacies, especially with those ping leaders, where the math changes just a little bit, but that little bit matters so much in the context of the meta.
Yeah, if you like haven't been a Palpatine player, how would you know when to sack your Vader to do 1 damage and draw 1 card? How would you know that's the right thing to do if you haven't like gone through those patterns a few times to kind of figure that out?
Yep. And like taking a broad scope too, in a wider meta, it really rewards the sharper players and the players who have played more just being more familiar, even if you haven't seen a specific matchup before, knowing that like, oh, I'm playing against a blue villain leader here. I think I want to value my late game cards more, and if I'm playing Palpatine, I want to keep my ramp more. And so like an opening hand, you'll look at of like maybe it has a resupply and a super laser tech, but no turn 1 play. Most people, well, I don't know, but like the instinct is to mulligan a hand with no turn 1 play. And in a lot of cases, that's what you want to do. But in a specific matchup, like against Akira, you're totally fine skipping turn 1 a lot of the times to get that ramp online and to get that card draw going. So
it's a great game.
Yeah.
I love this game.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So speaking of Palpatine, yeah, I think that leader definitely gets a bump. It was kept in check by just a lot of aggro decks and DJ.
Yeah, aggro. Yeah.
But it's an 8 deploy leader. If we have a lot of aggro decks still in the meta, and we consider this Han Green list of pilot aggro, right? Then could potentially not be that well positioned. But that being said, I think it's super strong. I always like the yellow strategy. I played in set 1 yellow. I played even in set 2 and set 3 in a PQ. I played yellow Palp. And I did very well with them. And I think that it's in a diverse field where you're not going to be playing like 5 aggro decks in a 7-round tournament.
Thank you.
And maybe only just play 1 or 2 or 3 max. It can do super well. I actually talked to the player that got top 4 in this France Store Showdown, the Palp Yellow player, right? And he was like, I'm so happy I dodged all the aggro matchups, and then until the top 4, and then he played against the winner and then lost.
Yeah,
right. But yeah,
that's how that goes. I do think the way you construct Palpatine, and you can kind of see it in Jonathan's list here, changes a lot because of pilot leaders. And we'll talk about a couple of these cards, I think, here soon. But blue villain and just villain control in general got a lot of tools, and we can revisit some old tools to help combat this new meta that, like, early on, because Django, you didn't have wiggle room to explore those kind of tools.
Yeah, so let's get into this is our closing segment, last segment of the episode. We're going to talk about some breakout cards that we think are getting better in the 4.5 meta or 4 point whatever post-ban meta of set 4. Mickey, what are some cards that you think are going to be breakouts here?
Going to bring 2 to the table here. Both set 1 cards that I think we can revisit. Some didn't ever really have their shine, and some had their shine and then kind of faded. First one is Aggression. At the beginning of set 4, with pilots coming into the meta, I was initially looking for like the best deck to play Aggression in, and I think that's its biggest weakness, is that like finding a leader-based combo for that card. But now that Django is gone, which was keeping the pilot decks out of the meta, I expect the pilot decks to kind of come out in full force, like Han Green. And Aggression answers a Falcon with a Chewie on it. It answers the new Falcon with 2 pilots on it. You just defeat both pilots, deal 4 to it. Like, it's a one card answer to a lot of these go tall strategies with pilots. It kills pilot leaders. I think there's a lot of juice to be squeezed out of that card, and at its worst case, it's an open fire that draws you a card. So like it's hard for that card to be bad, and in some matchups, it's excellent. So still has to find a home. It could be like a Boba 4 Tarkintown deck. It could be a Luke 4 Tarkintown deck. Maybe it's just like a Sabine Tarkintown. As you can tell, Tarkintown is a very good base, and you also get to play that if you're in double red. So I think some double red deck is going to come out at some point and like shake up the meta just a little bit, because I think aggression is really well positioned right now. Along same lines, to contest the pilot leaders or just pilots in general, I think Traitorous got a lot better. We were talking as well that like green blue villain control is in a better spot because DJ is gone, and ramping into a Traitorous is a tried and true strategy from set 1. Like if you're like playing on curve and you ramp on turn 2 and your Quinlan opponent plays a Cassian or an Ezra especially, it feels real good being able to steal that. And Chewie prevents your units from being defeated and bounced, but does not prevent them from being stolen. So you can steal a Falcon with a Chewie on it. And it's just such a high ceiling card. Now, with pilots coming out, I do expect more upgrade hate. Like aggression is very good against Traitorous. My 2 cards kind of clash there, but I think the ceiling is so high on that card, and in decks like Palpatine specifically, where you can mitigate the downside by getting rid of the unit as soon as possible to Palpatine's ability. I think those are 2 cards I expect to see a lot more of. Traitorous more so because I think Traitorous has more obvious homes, but I expect and kind of hope to see aggression find more of a meta share.
Yeah, I want to throw out an idea with aggression and double red. Is there was a new card. This isn't one of my cards, by the way, but no disintegrations, right? One possible combination is Vader double red, like set 1 Vader double red. I ran into a few people playing that, and it seems pretty good.
There was
with the no disintegrations and then aggression.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a meme I saw on a Facebook somewhere. It was like, I walked so you can run, and it was Vader Tarkintown and then Quinlan Tarkintown. So
yeah,
it is the OG ping Tarkintown deck.
So what cards you got?
Now the other card you mentioned. Well, before that, Traitorous, right? One counter argument to Traitorous like being so good in the meta is you already mentioned it, right? Disabling Fang Fighters. People might bring in like Confiscate to play against pilot leaders. Now that's something else.
Yeah.
And then one card that is like super highly going to be highly played that you discussed earlier was the Bamboozle, right? And that's something that takes off the Traitorous as well. Yeah,
I mean,
but,
I think it's very good, but you don't see it in my Palpatine list.
Yeah.
I know it's good. I understand. I see why it's so good. I get what it can do. That's a lot of risk.
Yes.
It's a lot of reward.
Yeah, it's
I don't know. It's hard to decide.
Yeah, but the counter argument again to Bamboozle, right, is worst case. What's going to happen if you Traitorous something on your opponent's side and then they Bamboozle it back? Is it goes back to their side
tap
exhausted?
Yep.
Right.
And you get your Traitors back. So
and you get your Traitors back. They get potentially their pilots back if it's a piloted unit. But at least like the exhaust kind of makes up for it being outed, right? So and then you get to replay the Traitors.
It is a very low floor card. You can definitely get blown out by playing it. And sometimes you get stuck in spots where you kind of have to play it, and if they have the answer, you can lose the game from that point. But
the biggest blowout situation that has come up in the past with Traitors, and this is the argument that people didn't play Traitors in a lot of decks in the past, and it's going to come up now again, is Poe, right? With Sabine. Yeah, that seemed like a blowout situation. If they ECL Poe, the turn that you Traitors unit, get back their unit, and then attack with it. Yeah, you're so behind. You spent all 5 resources.
Yes. You can like it is a very intricate dance you kind of have to play with that card. And sometimes they're going to have the answer and you get blown out, but I think more often than not, you can get the game to a board state where Traitorous is a blowout on your side as opposed to your opponent's. I could definitely see, like, one of my favorite things to do is I Traitorous my opponent game 1 and then take it out games 2 and 3, and they cite it in confiscates for nothing. So there's some mind games you can play there as well, just because it's such a high impact card. Your opponent kind of has to respect it. And I think it's valued.
I've done that many times.
Yeah,
I've done that many times. If they see it game 1,
yes,
and it like wins you the game, you know they're bringing it.
I think back in set 2 with Green Palpatine, I was doing this kind of stuff. It's like a very high skill card. I think you can. It might seem low skill at first because you just slam it, steal the guy, I'm winning, but that's often not what happens with that card. You have to think about that card a lot and when to time it properly and exactly what you want to take. And like I said with Palpatine, I am often not keeping the unit I steal. I just want to get rid of it as soon as possible. Treat it as like 5 cost removal that draws me a card and deals a damage with the 6/3 source.
Especially if you trade or a super laser.
Oh, that was my favorite play to do in set 1. I
hate when that happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So the cards that I have on my list, I'm going to give you 2, and then kind of a bonus, like, is it good kind of card? So the first one is Salvage. So this is a set 3 card that came out, and I want to give a shout out to Maddie from KTOD, because they posted a video that I watched about what are some of the combinations that you were most excited for, and one of the combinations that Maddie pointed out was Salvage with Han Green, right? So Salvage, the reason why I think it wasn't really played in a deck other than Han Green for the most part, even into the Django meta of JTL, but post Django suspension, I think Salvage gets a little bit better in the context of a heavy Quinlan meta, right? So Quinlan, holding this card versus Quinlan makes their force throw 0. And then oftentimes, like, they're setting up like a force throw, like, and then a Tarkintown ping or like some other ping or run over with something that they have, right? And then it just totally blanks that, and it feels bad. And I mentioned the interaction just briefly earlier with Stolen AT Hauler, right?
Yeah.
So if you're playing Stolen AT Hauler post board with Han Green, you can bring in Salvage and then just hold it for like whenever they eventually out your Stolen AT Hauler. You just have to make sure that you keep 3 resources up, and then you can just get it back, right? I was doing some testing with teammates, and that interaction came up so often versus Quinlan, right?
It's brutal.
So yeah, I think that deck, so that card improves against that deck, but then it also improves because there'll be a little bit more villain control in the meta, and then they'll be outing your vehicles a lot of the times, and this becomes just extra copies of those vehicles.
Some of your best cards in those kind of matchups, depending in like post board or even main deck, you go up to these cards are like Home 1, Reinforcement Walker, Tranquility, or not Tranquility post board sometimes, but Tantive 4. So a lot of the cards you would want to revive anyway are vehicles in the first place. Yeah,
and I'm going to throw out something super spicy here about a build of Han Green that I have. I have a Data Vault build of Han Green. And this Data Vault build of Han Green, it is a Starhawk build, right? So the idea is now, like, it has 3 Starhawks in the main, and then it also has 2 Salvage in the main. And the idea is you have actually 5 copies of Starhawk because of that. Because you can always put down, if you draw Starhawk early, you just resource it. At some point before the 9 resources, you're going to selectively defeat it. And then Salvage is the copy of it.
That is so cool. That is super sick.
I like that. Yeah, it's very even in those control matchups, how you guys are describing, it's similar to how I use Palpatine's Return in my villain control decks.
Yes.
And
it's a mini Palpatine's Return.
I used to play 2 extra Relentless, 1 extra Palp Return, but with Quinlan being everywhere, I'm playing 2 extra Palpatine Return, 1 Relentless, and it's good when they discard the Vader and I can play it on 6.
It's gross.
All right, and my other card is Grogu. So Grogu's the set 2 card that was kind of like the event exclusive card as well as in the regular set. But a lot of people that went to Gen Con got it, and then we're getting it for pre-ordering early, right? Some boxes, and then playing in some other con events or demoing like the game at con events. But Grogu in set 2, it saw play in Ian's deck, right? The very first build of Han Yellow, and that's where I saw it being originally super strong. Was in that meta, early on in that meta, Sabine was like the deck to beat, right? Just like seen as the deck to beat, and blanking or exhausting plays from the onset was super strong. And now I think that card is going to be stronger in a post Django meta because there isn't like a leader that inbuilt does that, right? So that maybe you have another card if you're playing yellow that can do that. And it has the force trait for Quinlan, so it triggers off Force Throw immediately from the onset of the game if you so choose to.
Yes, it is.
I like that card
very
a lot.
Good. Early on, even in like halfway through set 3, in my Quinlan builds, I had 2 or 3 Grogu's main deck a lot of times. You shouted out KTOD Matty. I'm also going to shout out KTOD Matty because he and I were talking a little bit about Grogu coming back because these pilot leaders are so prevalent. If you slam a Grogu turn 1 against a Han Green, the only pilot that can do that does a lot of damage is going to be the Han because of that action compression. And even still, like oftentimes you're going to end up with initiative, so you can just tap the Falcon first action if you really want to, as well as the combo with Force Throw. And so I'm glad my little groggy boy Grogu might come back to shine some in this meta. It is definitely like I think the deck you'll see it most in is definitely Quinlan because of that Force Throw synergy. Some of my favorite lines in set 3 were turn one Spark or Grogu. Turn 2, the other one of those 2 costs plus Force Throw, because you just get to control your opponent's hand so much at that point, as well as deal with the unit, and you have this tapper on board to help mitigate damage to get you to the late game. It's a card that just needs time, and with Django as well as DJ gone, you have more time now.
Yeah.
I think for me on Grogu, I'll say my part. 2 things that I like about it that I don't know if you mentioned. I hope I'm not repeating too much, but it's got that magic 5. Right, so it's like my Pershing in Palpatine and Villain Control. It can't just be immediately ping Tarkintown. With Pershing, I can play another unit and start putting damage over there if I want to continue to protect it. And Grogu's the same. You can't just kill it immediately. And the other thing, I did a good bit of Grogu testing myself, and something that I noticed was a feature of Grogu is he's always, as long as he lives, he's always able to threaten the leader flip, right? Because leaders come into play ready. If Grogu, you can just leave your Grogu ready for that leader flip. And I think for me, that was where it was most powerful. I mean, you might have initiative, you might not, but it doesn't matter if you have initiative for the leader flip. For every other unit on the board, if you don't have initiative, they get to attack with whatever they want first. But not with leaders. You got to deploy it first, and you can exhaust it with the Grogu.
These are both really good points. Last note on Grogu from me, it's a card that always, when I played it, it felt terrible to play it. But then every turn after that, I was so happy it was on the board. It's a weird card like that where it doesn't feel great when you're playing a 0/5 that does nothing. But every other turn, you want that guy around.
Yeah, you're spending or investing your turn early for that later part of the game where you like, oh, this is amazing to have in this situation, right? Yep.
It is amazing how much these 0 power units, how much just that 1 power would be nice to have on these guys.
Yeah.
Like, when they have 0 and someone attacks into it and clears it for free, it doesn't seem like it should impact that much, but it just affects the match.
Hey, I mean,
you notice it.
Grogu holds a hot shot blaster pretty well. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. So the point to what you just mentioned, Jonathan, is with Pershing, right? my favorite way to out it was they draw one card and then I modded cohort into it.
Oof.
Right, or something like that. So
it's brutal.
Yeah, and then modded cohort doesn't even take the damage back, so it still is.
It's so
something that it usually dies when it ambushes, but it doesn't die to Pershing.
Yeah,
right?
it's rough.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is. So my cards are, if anybody that knows me or has played with me already knows, I'm completely obsessed with Regional Governor. Yes. I don't see a lot of Palpatine players playing it. It confuses me. I don't know why. It is so good. I've won so many games with Regional Governor, and in particular, Boss Blue just won a Sectors. Boss Blue can beat decks like Sabine. It's a control deck that can still beat these aggro decks. It's not as weak to them as my Palpatine deck is. It's very hard for me to beat Sabine. But Regional Governor and Relentless both can shut down that Boss Blue deck so hard. I can overtax their 1/1 removal and put them in a position where they need Laser Blast. And I'll wait for them to claim, drop that Governor, and name Laser Blast. And they just look at me like, wait, what? Oh no. Vader helps me go wide. Even these little units, if I'm just putting damage on them and presenting this wide board, as soon as I drop that Governor, they've got a problem that they have to solve at that point in the game. And so many other matchups, there's key cards that they're looking to play on specific turns. And the way that tends to play out is your opponent knows what the key cards are in their matchup against you. So they're not resourcing that card. So it looks like you're a wizard every time you play Regional Governor. You name a card and it's in their hand, but they've drawn like 20% of their deck or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a critical card in the matchup. They might have been in their opening hand and they kept it all the way up to that turn. So you're not a wizard. You just need to learn exactly what you need to shut down, exactly the turn you need to do it. And it's just an incredibly powerful card. It's so powerful.
It's very high skill as well.
It is very high skill. There's been a lot of situations where you can go multiple different directions depending on the turn. And sometimes you make the wrong call, right? But you have to really analyze what is the right card to call. And then sometimes it's like a true 50-50 on what to call. So I can imagine versus some villain green decks that have both resupply and super laser tech. You call one and it's the other, right? That's kind of just like a 50-50 call at that point, right?
Well, I always say laser tech because they can attack it into my Governor. So I'm always
that's true.
Always say laser
that is
tech.
a good point.
I never say
that is a good point. I would also say laser tech sometimes if it matters to have they play the unit for any particular reason, right? Other than just attacking, which you described. But I think one of my strong opinions on Regional Governor that improved recently is actually because of tech, right? So when I was describing earlier the to fill the void of DJ, right? In the yellow builds, what kind of cards can you incorporate to get that utility off of tech? And in yellow, it's Spark or Rebellion, maybe. That's something very similar to Regional Governor. Now, in one of the decks that I think potentially will become a popular deck again, Anakin Blue, Anakin Colossus, you can play tech and you can resource the Regional Governor at some point. If you don't want to play it because you have to play something else on curve,
right?
You just have less cards in your hand to play, right? But later on, you just bring it out off of tech, and it's that situation you described, Jonathan, where they've gone through 20 plus cards, so what is the most problem out to call at that point.
I've also seen Regional Governor start to pop up in some red-blue hero shells, whether it be Anakin or Rey, where you can modify the power of the Regional Governor to make it an actual unit to contest board.
Yes.
So,
yep.
It's been popping up some more, and I think I said earlier, Kira is one of my favorite cards. Regional Governor is very similar. You don't get to see their hand, but you get to stop the card entirely. So, very fun card.
Yeah, one more petition for people to play Regional Governor. It's not just naming exactly a card you don't want to see. You can also name a card to force them down a line that you know your hand is well suited against. So you can say, like a lot of times turn 1, you can be playing the Regional Governor to try and gamble shutting down their play that turn. But when you do that, you can think about, okay, what arena do I want them to play in? I have cards that play well in the ground. Like I've got this Royal Guard in my hand, so I want them to go to ground. So I'm going to name A-Wing because I know it's in their deck, or I'm going to name something in space. Or there's other times where I'm going to name a specific removal card or something like that. But that's something you're thinking about, like what lines does my hand not play well into? And let me just name a card that's going to send them down that line. And if it's in their hand, great. If it's not, either way, I know they're not going down that line now because I just made it unavailable.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot.
That's really, that is next level, I would say. Analysis of Regional Governor. And that's so good. Just to tailor like a game script with it.
Yeah, it's almost like playing chess and then removing some squares on the board. And saying, I know you like that line and you really love playing it. You're going to have to do something else this game.
Yep.
So then to close out my cards, you see Overwhelming Barrage in my list, but it is getting a lot weaker. And a big theme of what we've been talking about in these meta breakout cards is pilots. Card units going big and expecting to see more of it. And in Overwhelming Barrage, it's hard to have a unit on the board that is big enough to kill one of those piloted ships with just 2 extra attack. It doesn't line up very well. It's really hard. And especially in these ramp decks where you're wanting to ramp on 3, and then when you're on 5, what do you have on the board? You have your 2-drop. Mm-hmm. Maybe, if it's still alive. So that card, as powerful as it is, it's been a lot harder to line it up into this meta of like really tall ships. There's not a lot of like really small things for us to ping away off the board.
In my Palp Blue list, I've cut it entirely. I get having it because it is very good at stabilize. Like it helps you stabilize on the flip turn. So it's not really a 5 resource play as much as it is like a 3+5 on your 8 resource turn. But I found that and I could be wrong, and it could definitely sneak its way back into my list, but I haven't needed the OB to help me stabilize. I can just use spot removal and the healing and the Palp flip itself to stabilize the board from there. So I totally get OB being kind of low right now.
Yeah, in Palp Yellow, sticking with Palp, right? I always played it at 2 because I thought like on curve there was nothing really to get a huge OB off, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to see like one of the 2 or 2 of the 2 late game, right? So I can see that case. Like if you're playing the blue list, then you have hard removal instead. So you might just play those at different cost curves, and you don't have to depend on having a unit to buff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In my list, I have Rune Hako, so I have a 3-power official that I can put it on as a 2-drop, and I have Entrenched. If I don't ramp, then my Entrenched unit can take the OB, and I have Lompike because I'm a Colossus deck, so I want to have a little bit of extra smuggle. And then you can't ignore the late game Overwhelming Barrage. Yeah. It can be a one-sided laser blast, right? So I do agree with having 1 or 2. Like I'm okay playing singletons, as you can see, but I like 1 Overwhelming Barrage. I would be okay with that, but 0, I don't know.
That's fair. Like I said, I'm not used to it because I come from Palp Green, and weirdly, I think OB is best in Palp Green. Maybe not weirdly, because 1, you don't have that many tools, and 2, both Command and Enterprising Lackeys help set up OB really well.
Yes.
But so not playing Overwhelming Barrage in my Palpatine feels really, really weird. But I have definitely noticed the downtrend for that card.
Yeah, so I think the downtrend is kind of evident in what we were talking about, right? With Palpatine sometimes, but not having the ability to clear some of those piloted units. But what about in decks that take that route, that are villain decks, that they have piloted units?
Yeah,
Then OB is insane.
True.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
That is great. I haven't thought about it on like maybe a Boba 4 ECL, and like you get the OB on flip and the OB after the OB. That like just clear the board on your 6 resource turn.
Yeah, and one of my pet decks right now is, and this actually, there's a deck list that got its showcase in the Liverpool sector. Vader, the new Vader, right? The set 4 Vader pilot one, where that's like I believe it's like 5 attack that you get when you deploy it on a vehicle, right? So it just suddenly makes something huge, right? And then it lines up right with the OB turn. Like it's the 6 resource turn, but like that's you can play OB right there, right? So it's huge. One of my favorite things to do with the blue version of that deck, which is the one that got I think 22nd at Liverpool, is you're able to spam a lot of token units, and then even these other small units that generate tokens like Kajimi. So you can play something like Malevolence real fast. Malevolence is a 7/7, and then usually you play that on the 5 resource. The next turn you flip Vader onto it. It's a 12 attack. And then you slap a OB, OB for 14. It's insane.
That's too much. That's not. I don't have enough things to kill.
I do think every format, it feels like, has about the back half of the format, and maybe it's happening a little sooner since of the suspensions. People spend time trying to find the best overall barrage deck, because that card is at its baseline just so powerful, and like you just have to find the right home. It's part of why I think Kira is often the default blue-green villain, because her OBs are insane.
It's so natural.
And Kira I think will be a popular deck. So there you go. Like OBs,
I agree,
going to be very strong in one of the more popular decks.
It's kind of like CAD. Like we know it's good. Where are the results? But no. So just to close up, no glory, only results in that piloting theme, in the Chewbacca theme. I mean, even people are a little hesitant to play K2SO now, right? Like there's situations where you're like, what? If these villain decks are running 3 no glories, do I really want this card? And just it's like, I was playing Vanquish in previous sets, even when people were playing Fell the Dragon and Takedowns, because I needed that flexibility. And this is Vanquish.
Yep.
It's just even better. Like now I can play Vanquish without being embarrassed that I'm playing it. It's a lot better.
It's a lot better. And one of the cards you might see in the meta again now is K2 with Sabine's Rise, right? And then even the Anakin lists, they could play K2, right? So that's one that you take away. But the devil's advocate of why it's like sometimes worse than even Vanquish is if you're in that situation, you have to take a bountied unit. Your opponent gets their own bounty, which is funny.
Well, I'm not playing top targets.
I don't know if this is a stolen AT hauler as well. It's worse against that.
Yes,
because they get it back.
It's hilarious. Yeah. But you never defeat stolen AT hauler with no glory.
But
wait, I didn't know this. Okay, what happens?
So you take it and then
when defeated.
Your opponent may play this card from the discard pile.
Your opponent may play it from. It doesn't say. It just says the discard pile.
Yep, not yours.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh man.
So
thank you guys.
Be wary of that. I will say no glory is along the same lines of traitorous. Like it has a lot of similar play patterns. Like we talked about traitorousing a super laser tech. Sometimes no glorying a super laser tech is totally fine. You can play the similar kind of play pattern, but it also answers Chewbacca, which is a big one. It's not got that death rattle style effect when defeated effect. But it is an answer to Chewbacca. Same with Lurking TIE Phantom, which might see a rise, just because that card is so powerful. As well as like Ruthless Raider is still going to be around. We talked about K2, And there's all these random win defeateds, and a floor, like you mentioned, Jonathan, a floor of Vanquish is honestly good. And in this meta, I think Vanquish is totally reasonable to play.
Yeah, so that wraps it up today, guys. I appreciate both of you coming on the show.
Yeah.
Mickey stepping in for Ian.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
While he's out. Sunny, I love like bringing people in from outside of our siloed Bothan network core group, and bringing you guys in, having you on the show, and talking through Star Wars Unlimited together. It's amazing. Like, I think this might be our longest episode ever today.
Wow.
So it's just how much fun we're having talking through this, and it's great to bring in new ideas, new minds, new people that you don't see every day, and have these conversations. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, this was awesome.
So thanks, everybody. We'll have Ian back next week. I don't know who we're going to bring on yet or what we're going to talk about, but all right. Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
What kind of hobbies do you guys have outside of Star Wars Unlimited?
I'll let you take this, Sunny, first while I think about it.
Yeah, sure. So one of my hobbies outside of Star Wars Unlimited that I got into a few years back. So I lived in Louisville for close to 4 years. And one of the big things that Louisville is known for, they're known for two big things, but one of them is my hobby. And the other, I'll talk about the one that's not my hobby first. It's the Derby, the Kentucky Derby. Okay. And the one that is my hobby is bourbon, right? So bourbon is predominantly made in Louisville, Kentucky. It can be made in anywhere in the U.S., but when I was in Louisville, I started visiting a lot of distilleries. I had colleagues that were really into bourbon, and then they got me into it. So I started developing a bourbon collection. So that's my hobby right now.
That's cool. Mine are a little less cool than that, I think. I recently got addicted to the game Balatro again because I finally got it on my phone, and now I can take it with me wherever I go. And
Wait, what is
broke
this? What
card.
is this?
So it is a. Do you know Slay the Spire?
Yes.
Okay. It is similar genre where it's a deck building roguelite, but instead of like building cards that do damage and stuff, it's just a normal 52 card deck. But then you can give enhancements to your cards. You can like change their suit. You can give them extra points, basically. You can change their ranks, and then you also get these point modifying jokers. So like one will be if you play 2 pair, you get 10 multiplier, and so then every hand you score gives you a certain amount of chips and a certain amount of multiplier, and then the equation happens and gives you a score, and the score slowly ramps up over time until you try and like beat the 8th round is kind of where the normal mode ends, and then you can go as long as your build will let you. So it is a poker deck building roguelike, and it's pretty
That's
addictive.
crazy.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to check that out. That's funny.
It's like $15. It's everywhere. It's like on Switch, on Steam, on mobile.
Yeah, Balatro.
Balatro, yeah. Would recommend. And the music is sick. So I've been addicted to that recently again. And
then, so when your hobby is bourbon, I assume that involves some drinking of it. But like,
yeah,
what is it? Does that mean you like invite friends over? Because I've never had this kind of hobby before. So are you inviting people over and just like I've got these new bourbons. They're awesome. I got 3 new ones since the last time you saw me. Let's try them. Like, is that what you do? What is that like?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I joined a local whiskey community in the Northern Virginia area, and we do all sorts of things. We do these things called shares, which is kind of what you described. So we each, when we have a community share, we each bring a bottle of bourbon over $50 to the share, and then we'll have a group of at least like 10 people come to that share, so we get to try new things. And then one thing that is really cool that we're working on right now is actually it's called like a re-aging or an infinity barrel. And an infinity barrel is you can put bourbons that are already on the market together as a blend and then re-age them in a new barrel, right? So that's something that we started as a group, and we took, I don't know, like it was at least 50 gallons, because a bourbon barrel is like 52, 53. Yeah, and we put it back into a barrel, and then we're re-aging that. We've been tasting it like every month or so, and then when we determine that the taste is good, then we'll bottle it back up again.
Wow. I have like on my YouTube feed, I haven't done it yet, but I keep getting these like YouTube shorts about making your homemade mead. It's not bourbon, but like that has been intriguing me. And then in college, when I turned 21, my sister got me my like a homemaking gin kit. So like make your own homemade gin, and it was really fun. It's like some of the best gin I've ever had. So I have done like ancillary stuff. So I see it's really fun when you get to, and like obviously things are more fun when you get more people involved, and it's more of a community thing.
Yep.
Wow, that's interesting.
Outside of that, it's just a lot of collection of bourbon. So I just like hunt rare bottles and collect them and just own them, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like travel around, like, oh, I guess you probably go places on purpose for it, right? Or do you discover it as you travel?
Locally, yeah, and then sometimes as I'm just traveling, I'll stumble upon a liquor store and see if they have anything interesting, right? But I don't specifically travel to a certain location.
You're not like,
other than maybe Kentucky. Like that's I do go to Kentucky every year. I would say once. Yeah, sometimes it's multiple times a year.
But you're not like taking an overseas trip to Germany to get the special bottle.
No, nothing like that. Yeah.
Yeah, my hobby outside of SWU lately has been Warhammer 40K. My brother and I played it a lot, and my brother just moved back near me. He moved away after school for a job, and then he was able to come back to, all his friends and family were still down here, even as he was working. And he came back, and we've been getting into 40K. I had multiple armies. I sold a few of them because I'm like, I'm not using this. I don't need it. In fact, I sold those armies when Star Wars came out. I was like, oh, this game is so good, and this set is so good. I want to get lots of it.
Yeah. So
I sold those armies. And lately I've been playing Death Guard is the army that I have. I've been playing and building models and stuff. I like the building part. That part's pretty fun. The painting is fine. Like, I'm actually pretty good at it, but it is a lot of work. So that part's kind of tough, but playing the game's pretty fun. And that's what I've been doing.
I've never really gotten into war games because it's very intimidating.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of pieces and a lot on the table, I would say.
Yeah.
But I have a friend too that really likes it and actually likes the painting aspect of it the most.
That's pretty common.
And he also told me about a potential trip he's making to like Finland, and they might have a big Warhammer tournament there, which is pretty cool.
That's sick.
Yeah, pretty popular in Europe. But yeah, I mean, for me, it is really interesting thinking about your units on the table can only move so much. So you're like looking at the table and thinking about circles around each unit and where they can move to and where they intersect and how they could get to each other and how they can reach each other with their weapons. And you're only going to play 5 rounds. So every time they move, you're like committing. It's like when you like take your actions or claim initiative in Star Wars, like you're full committing to something.
Yep.
And then like playing it out over the course of the rounds. It's pretty fun. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something similar Star Wars themed is X-Wing, right? It works in the same fashion.
Yeah, I know a good number of people like ported from X-Wing, or like they do both, where they came from X-Wing to SWU.
Yeah.
It is interesting. You probably talked about this, like the divergent paths to SWU, where like it seems half the people came from Star Wars, half the people came from card games. Some people came from both, but